Pull up your socks, straighten that headband. You are listening to the CHGO Chicago Marathon Podcast, a podcast for culture, community, and challenge that surrounds the world's fourth largest marathon. CHGO Marathon Podcast is presented by Goose Island, the official beer of CHGO. Find one of their Chicago locations at gooseisland.com/locations. What's up, everyone? My name is Kevin Kaduk. I'm a first-time Chicago Marathon entrant. I'm also the head of content at CHGO, a digital sports network anchored in the West Loop. If you've never heard of us before, we cover all of the city's sports teams and throw cool events, and we just help build the fastest-growing sports community in the city. Now, I'm excited to start CHGO Marathon because it's a little different from what we usually do here, while also exactly the same. No, we're not centered around a professional sports team, but the running community is just as dedicated and fervent as any crowd you'll find at the United Center or Wrigley Field, maybe even more so. And just like the Bears, Bulls, or Blackhawks, the Chicago Marathon is deeply ingrained in our city's fabric. For one Sunday each October, it brings Chicago together in a way that really nothing else can. So I am really looking forward to getting started. And what are we planning with the CHGO Marathon Podcast? Mostly we want to have a lot of fun while connecting with other people who are working towards that same finish line on October 8th. We're looking at roughly 12 episodes over the next 4 months featuring interviews with runners, organizers, volunteers, and anyone else who's interesting and connected with the Chicago Marathon. If you're excited about this podcast, you can help us grow by doing 3 things. First, follow us on Twitter at CHGO_marathon. Make sure you tell a friend, maybe someone who's also running the marathon or someone who's just thinking about it or likes things connected to Chicago. And then also make sure you leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast provider. All right, that monologue is over. How'd I do, guys?
That was pretty good. It was good.
Excellent. I was riveted.
All right, today I am joined by CHGO baseball writer Jared Wyllys, who is also a first-time Chicago Marathon entrant. You're an entrant until you start running.
Yeah.
You can't say you're a first-time marathoner until you're out there, okay?
Yeah, haven't done it yet.
And we're joined by a good friend and a 4-time veteran of the Chicago Marathon, Andy Behrens of Yahoo Sports. Andy, welcome to CHGO.
Hey, thank you. Oh man, I have walk-up music and everything. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
It is a pleasure to be here. It's fun to talk marathoning. This is typically something. There's not a lot of people in my life that like to hear about my own running, right? Like it's kind of like fantasy sports in that way, right? Like you can't tell people about your leagues. You can't really talk to people about your running. So this is fun.
That's an interesting point. Yes, fantasy baseball and marathon running do have, because I have felt that so far. I committed to running the marathon back in February, and I've mentioned it to some people, and you get a lot of that. Oh God, why would you ever want to do that? I could never run that far. Mm-hmm. And it's like, all right, cool. Like I'm actually trying to work towards a goal, man. Like why are you bringing the negativity?
You can usually talk to runners about it forever, but you know, if people are not runners, if people don't like have that little bug for like finishing a marathon at some point, they don't always want to hear your training stories.
Well, I want to hear everyone's training stories. I want to connect with as many runners out there. We announced this podcast last week. We announced the Twitter account. We're already building that. People are already suggesting guests. If you have a guest suggestion, hit me up at kevin@allchgo.com. And we're just going to have a lot of fun. I have some guests lined up, but obviously plenty of other chair spots as well. Jared, I didn't know that you were running this until I announced this. So I actually kind of felt kind of dumb. So you kept that kept that close to your vest.
Yeah, I hadn't really, shared that at all yet. So then, when I saw that this was happening, I reached out and said, "Hey, this might be fun to talk about it," because it is my first time doing it. I ran a half marathon last fall in September, and just going through that process and preparing even to do that, I found that I enjoyed it so much and wanted like the next step up, a bigger challenge, which kind of led me to the Chicago Marathon, because everybody I've talked to who has done it has nothing but positive things to say about it. They all kind of talk the same way about the energy and the experience of going through the city and the different neighborhoods and the people. And I've definitely encountered some who, who they don't run, and it sounds very daunting to somebody who hasn't done it. And honestly, even having done the amount of running that I have, it still sounds a little daunting, but maybe that's something we can get into with the tips later. But yeah, I'm excited about kind of going through again the process of preparing and having a schedule to the running and all that.
Andy, do you remember your first Chicago Marathon? When was it?
Oh yeah. So 1999. My wife and I both decided to do it just for like the sake of completing a marathon. I think I was, like we were coming up on 30. I'm ancient. We were coming up on like 30 years old, and that seemed like a, I don't know, milestone birthday thing to do. We weren't hardcore runners. It was the sort of thing where like we were probably running 2-3 days a week just to stay fit. Most of what I was doing at the time was like rec league hoops, right? Like that was like my only thing. But running was like anything else. It gave us a goal. It was hard, right? And we finished on fumes, like 5-hour marathoners, like back of the packers, which was fun because it actually allows you to take it. Like Chicago's a beautiful course, and the way the neighborhoods turn out is unlike anything else I've experienced. And so like it was a blast, right? I mean, it was a blast until it wasn't, until it got really hard at the end. So we did 2 or 3. In fact, the first 3 that I did were like 99, 2000, 2001.
3 in a row.
Just to finish them, like high 4s, other side of 5, whatever. I would say the second 2 that I finished were a little bit more comfortable than the first. I did not know what I was in for with the first one.
Did you feel like you had a good training base going to that first one?
I probably was. I was probably a little too arrogant going into the first one, right? Like
Okay.
I was like, I don't know. I'm 28, 29 years old. I work out. I'm gonna.
Did you run in high
fine.
school or no?
No.
Okay.
No. High school was, the sort of standard issue sports, and then like same deal. Like when I got out into the world, I wasn't really running regularly. But when we decided to do it, I feel like my wife decided to do it before I did, and then I was like, well, if you're doing it, I got to do it. And I was just like, I didn't understand any of the like I didn't look hard enough into like what actually happens to you during the race and how difficult like that final, like 12 kilometers, 10 kilometers can actually be, and what's going on physiologically. I had a plan. I basically followed the running plan as instructed, but there's it was one of those plans where like I don't think I went further than 18 miles on any long run or anything like that. And all the bad stuff happens after 18 miles. So
That's what they don't tell you.
yeah.
Do you feel like how much more information is now available to you in 2023 for a first-time marathoner than what was available to somebody in 1999?
Yeah, it's I'm sure it's totally different, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many publications out there. There's a million different podcasts you could listen to. There's all kinds of outlets that will give you reasonable training plans. And it's just, like YouTube opens up a lot of doors. You can hear about a lot of people's individual experiences. So it's, but at the time you could still like, I don't know, you could follow a Runner's World training plan. Like that was pretty good. It was, there was enough information out there to help me sort of land the plane a little bit, but
Right.
It's also one of those things where you just learn through personal experience, and you
Getting
learn
out there.
it's figuring out what works for you during a race is so much more important than, all the data points that have worked generally for a lot of other people.
Yeah. In the YouTube chat, Alec S says there are 2 races in a marathon, the first 20 and the last 6.2.
That's just a pure statement of fact. Like you'll hear that from so many people. Like we'll just and you it doesn't really sink in, I think, until you've experienced it. But that people will commonly say the first half of the marathon is the first 20 miles, and you're gonna be feeling good. Like
Right.
17 miles into the race, you're gonna be feeling really good. And you like ideally, I don't know, I've got a marathon coming up this weekend. Ideally, you can feel pretty good. Like you can manage the race in such a way, and you can manage your own like nutrition and fueling and all that in such a way that you're feeling pretty good in the back 8K, 10K as well. But that really takes some getting used to, and you have to experience it at least once before you get it.
So as you mentioned, you're actually running the Grandma's Marathon a week from
Duluth, yeah.
Yeah, in Duluth. That's one of the big marathons in America. It's not one of the majors, but it's kind of a bucket list marathon for people.
I'm really looking forward to being there. It's a good field size. I think the field size is like 9,000. It's basically along Lake Superior, which is it's beautiful up there. So I'm looking forward to that. It's reasonably fast, reasonably flat. I think it's like a net downhill overall. I don't have like a specific time goal for the whole thing, but I mean, you probably experience the same thing I do. We live in Chicago, like. You can't find hills here, so I'm not signing up for some like rolling hills marathon or anything like that.
Yeah. Shout out to everyone in the YouTube chat. Level Up with Jake's throwing out some good comments there.
Hey, Jake.
Make sure you throw us a like. Jake says 5 hours is a good time. I'd take that.
I would be pleased with that,
Yeah.
especially as a first timer. That's kind of what I'm going for.
Yeah. So Jake says, what's everyone's finish time goal? We are going to get to goals here in a little bit. I want to talk just maybe a little bit about my story, what got me into this. I'm 44 years old. Everyone was like, why are you doing this? And I kind of made the joke, well, I'm in my mid-40s. I'm just, a guy living in the suburbs. What else are you supposed to do? But truthfully, it's always been something I've wanted to do. Chicago Marathon, to me, has just always been one of the city's best events. I've always gone out there to support my friends who are running. I'd like to post up in Greektown and go up. I never really go north. Sometimes I'm in Old Town, but Old Town, Greektown, and then go to the finish line. And it's always kind of something that I've wanted to do, and I've just never gotten over that. Like, I've just never worked up the courage, right? I've run a lot of half marathons. I've run rock and roll half marathons, a couple out in the suburbs. Probably 6, 7, or 8 of them. Enjoyed doing that. I never thought when I finished that I could be like, okay, now turn around and do it, run back to the starting line. That's nothing I ever wanted to do. Last fall, I came in here for Bear Sunday, and I had to get off at a different exit because it's blocked off down here on Racine because the marathon goes right by Whitney Young. And when I parked, I kind of saw all the excitement. And last year was the absolute best weather you could possibly ever have for the Chicago Marathon. And I walked in here, and Mark Carman was like, let's run it next year. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And now Carm he hasn't held up his end of the bargain, but that stuck with me. And I thought it was something that I wanted to do. Add to that the fact that I'm running it for a charity named Cal's Angels, and I'll get into this in a later episode that is helping out a member of my family, pediatric cancer. My cousin Laura is running it for her son, and I said, all right, sign me up. Everything's kind of aligning. If I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do it? So I'm really looking forward to the challenge. Week 1 training started last week. And right now I'm feeling great about it. Ask me again in a month or two. I don't know, right. But I do know that if I am going to run this, I'm going to have to connect with people who like doing it, who are into it, who have done it before, who are doing it for the first time. So I'm really appreciative of both you guys being here, and then everyone else who I hook up with over the next 4 months. So Chicago Marathon 2023, let's do it.
One of the really nice things about like your first training cycle for your first marathon is that like you're hitting all these hurdles that you've never hit before. And that's just cool. Like, people go through like, oh, that was my first 8-mile run. That was my first half marathon. That's the first time I've reached 15 miles. There's just a bunch of firsts along the way that are really gratifying. So, man, kind of envious.
I don't know if I would want to do it if I didn't live in the area. I don't know if I'd want to do just a regular marathon. You know what I mean? Because there's obviously a lot of different marathons that are run. There's one in Door County, right? Which I'm sure is pretty whatever, but it's not the same sort of thing as like Chicago, right?
Well, one of the things I've heard kind of on that note is part of what makes the Chicago Marathon so special is that you have the energy of the people who are there to watch almost the entire time. Because I've talked to people who have run other marathons there's stretches where you're more by yourself. And they've talked about how just mentally that's so much tougher because you don't get to kind of draw from the energy of some of the people that are there watching. 'Cause I'm thinking, for instance, there's the Fox Valley that's the half marathon that I did last year, but I had a friend who ran the full the same day, and he talked about that. He said there were long stretches where it's just like you're running along the river and there's really nobody there, and it gets mentally like it gets tough because you're by yourself.
So I think Matt Lindner, Twitter gadfly, man about town. He said this is the closest that Guys to Us will ever feel to being a professional athlete. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well,
because of the people cheering and
for a couple of reasons. One, because there's it's one of the few events of this sort that the pros are in the same race that you are. It doesn't feel like they are.
You never see them.
In fact, it's one of the more, I don't know, mentally it can be a challenging moment on the course because the winner is done. And you're in Old Town, or you're in, you've barely hit the West Loop, or
that's
something
like
that.
That is not going to catch me by surprise, Andy.
And then you start to hear, people are finishing this thing. I have 13 miles.
Yeah, but you're I started 45 minutes late, so it's
yeah. So that gets you. You might catch a glimpse of the actual first of all family members, friends who are going to turn out and support you.
Yeah,
they should get there so they can see the elites because it is a totally different sport among the elites. It is beautiful. I think that one of the reasons that I really got into it, I was telling you, my wife and I ran our early marathons, and then I got into it again in a different way and in a much more personally competitive way later on. Some of the fact is one of the reasons for that is that we lived on Sedgwick for a little while, and we were on the marathon course
right there,
and seeing the elites come by and how they're performing a different action than you are, right? You can't hear their feet hit the street really. They're so smooth. They're standing so differently from
they're running faster than if I were on a moped.
You can really go through the calculations. I can maybe run 200 meters, 300 meters as fast as they're running an entire damn marathon, and that's a little intimidating. But it's cool to be in the same experience that you're in the same race. You're literally in the same sporting event as some of the best athletes in the world. And then you're getting all this feedback from a crowd that you just, I don't know, maybe you had that in high school basketball or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But you haven't had that in forever, and that's awesome. It's great. And Chicago there can't be, I don't know. I haven't done every marathon, right? I haven't done every major or anything like that. I know Boston's great. I know New York's great. There can't be very many cities in the world that turn out the way Chicago does and the way the neighborhoods do.
Alex says, marathons can be like golf courses. If you get into it, you start seeing certain courses and saying, I'd love to experience that one. Also, shout out to my man, Marcos Bueno. He's a guy that we've made friends with since launching CHGO, and he's running it. He says, what's up, fellas? Kevin, thanks for this podcast. I'm on the same training level. Love the Chicago running community. We are a lot and proud. Looking forward to all of us on the journey towards October. So this is what I'm talking about. This is why we started the CHGO Marathon Podcast, because I think there's going to be a lot of people we're connecting with. Also, shout out to Baloney Fonseca. Credit to you, Kevin. I've thought about it for a long time. I have family that run it every year. I never committed to more than a half marathon. Well, it's time. Baloney was on the White Sox podcast on Sunday, I think. So now you need to make a guest appearance maybe on next year's marathon podcast. So, all right, let's talk about goals for the 2023 Chicago Marathon for me and Jared. You have goals for the Grandma's one that you're running up in Duluth, Andy. Andy, do you want to go first and say what you're trying to do?
Yeah, we were talking about this a couple days ago. I seriously, marathons that I enter now, I have but one goal, and I want to get the final 10K.
Right.
I want to smooth that out, right? Because I've run, this will be my 12th marathon.
Mm-hmm.
I've made roughly the same mistake, different variations on the same mistake in most of them, right? Which is to hold a pace for 20 miles, and whether it's the way I plan out the fueling, the way I the mistakes that I make along the way. At some point in every race, there's a moment where you're like, man, I feel awesome. I'm gonna throw in a 7:30 mile. I've got a little downhill here. I'm going to bank a little time. You're going to come up with all kinds of ideas that are actually terrible ideas, and they can screw you up at the end of the race. So,
are these ideas you had before the race or while you're out there?
You'll one of the things you'll realize is that you just get stupid as the race goes along, and some of it is just Jared's
looking uncomfortable for the people listening to this podcast right now.
you'll react to the crowd a little bit. That's really fun. And you also get that little runner's high at some point in the race. Maybe it's 13, 14 miles in, you're feeling good. And you're like, oh man, I got a little downhill section here. I'm going to bank a little time, and you'll just do some things that you should not be doing. And they come back to bite you. In January, I ran the Rock and Roll Arizona Marathon, and I went out at a very deliberate pace, and I held it for a long time, and I was pretty steady, pretty conservative, and that is as close as I have ever come to like every marathon is like the end for me is like just a controlled crash landing, right? But that one was the smoothest that I've ever managed, right?
Okay.
I almost always, at some point, most runners don't go through this necessarily, but at some point I'll always like cramp up. Something will cramp up. It didn't hit me until like 25.9 miles in that, which is bad, but at least I could see the finish, and I worked out the cramp, and I finished the thing, and it was that was about as smooth as any closing 10K has ever been. Most of the miles were, I think all the miles were like sub 9 minutes, which isn't great, and it's not the way I started out, but it felt comfortable. I didn't feel terrible at the end, and so like I feel like I really got it. Like I really started to manage that final 10K well, and so it's really all I want to do in this one is equal or improve on that experience. Like once I finally get the end of the race to a point that I feel like I understand the way to fuel for it, and I feel like I can really sort of land the plane safely. Then I'll work on overall time goals for the thing.
Okay. So your second goal is finish under 340.
If I do the first thing, I'm definitely doing the second thing, right? Because like most of my, I don't know, I think my last like 8 marathons have all been somewhere in between like 320. I've broken 330 one time.
Okay.
It was the Bayshore Marathon, which is really lovely. It's up in Traverse City. You run along the lake the whole time. It's great. So I had like, that was a good experience for me. This last Arizona was a good experience, but like when I bomb them, it's still like 345, 344, something like that. It's not too bad, but it's no fun to detonate at the end and then barely crawl across the finish.
And then 3, bring home Betty's Pies. What is Betty's Pies, and what pies are you bringing home?
Yeah, I was looking at some discussions of the greater Duluth area, and this is just really a reminder to like if you travel for a race or anything like that, like whether it's Duluth, Minnesota, or whether you go to New York for the New York City Marathon, like really experience the city, because the race generally is just a beautiful way to experience any city, right? You'll find that in Chicago. That's true anywhere. Make sure that you get out and do the things that you should do in the place where you're running this thing. And apparently there's a place called Betty's Pies where you can't make a reservation in Two Harbors, Minnesota, that where many locals claim the best pies on earth come from. So I'm anxious to try that.
I like to, when I go up to the Twin Cities, I like to stop at a Norski Nook on the way home. You ever been to Norski Nook?
That's awesome.
And you have to bring your own pie tins, or they charge you $6 or $7. So I don't know if Betty's the same way.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's incredible.
You might want to bring your own pie tins, Andy. Jared, what are your goals for the 2023 Chicago Marathon?
My time goal is a lot different, but and I'm basing, so I picked 5 hours, and I'm kind of basing this on my experience with the half marathon back in September. So I think I finished in like 2:23. And so I want to be realistic about what's possible. Because if I'm being really honest, it's mostly just about finishing. If it's a little over 5 hours, I don't think I'm going to be disappointed, because my primary goal is I'm doing this for the first time. I want to do it. Mm-hmm. So, but I looked at, 2:23, what's kind of realistic. Like, obviously you double that, but at the same time, I'm not going to hold the same pace as I did, for a race that's half as long. Because Kevin, like you said, mentally, just the thought of what it felt like finishing 13 miles and then imagining, okay, now do that again. That's daunting a little bit. So
absolutely.
But yeah, so kind of looking at 5 hours, and that's one of the things that I'm working on now is really developing a sense for what a comfortable pace is, and something that I can maintain over a longer stretch of time. Because when I go on some of my longer runs, what I've noticed is I can be pretty quick coming out of the gate, but then some of those later miles I slow down. And so trying to find the right pace to start with, and that's something that I can hold. And so that's something that I'm working on right now. And kind of on that note, one of the other goals that I had was just, I want to, don't let it, the goals 2 and 3 are kind of similar, but I want to enjoy the process as much as the experience, because last year during the summer, working on getting ready to run a half marathon, I have very fond memories of some of those longer runs that I took, going out and doing 8, 9, 10 miles just on my own. Like, that felt like a really big accomplishment. And I do remember the first time I ran 6. That was like, I'd never done that before. Yeah. And I took a screenshot of, on my, my app on my phone, and I sent it to my wife, and I'm like, look, I did 6 miles, because I felt so, felt so good about it. And just had really fond memories of the process. And so, you can't replicate that exactly, but I enjoyed that so much that I want to, really keep that in mind as I'm preparing, because I know that some of those runs are going to be hard when it's summertime and I'm going out and doing 18 miles. Like, that's not easy. So just mentally thinking about it that way. Yeah. And I got into, I know I saw Jake ask the question how we got into running. And for me, it was something that, like, I was not a runner at all until about 2 years ago. And then at the time I was 39 years old and was thinking about, like, okay, my next birthday, I'm going to be 40, and not feeling like I was in the shape that I wanted to be in. And so running was something that I said, I know I can go out and do this as a way of helping me just get better shape. In my very first run, I mapped out like exactly a mile, because at the time I'm like, that's as much as I can handle. Let's go out and do it. And then just gradually it became something that I was like, I'm really enjoying this. Like, I wouldn't, if you had asked me 2 years ago, are you a runner? Do you like running? I would have said, heck no. But the more I've done it, the more I feel like I like it. I enjoy doing it. So what I don't want to let happen, and this is, I think, my second goal that I put up there, is just, I don't want it to ever then start to feel like it's a chore. Yeah. Okay, I'm only doing this because it's something I have to do. I like doing it now. I go out and do it because I really want to. Yeah. And I want to maintain that feeling as much as I can.
What's funny is, like, I'm attracted to running because I do just kind of like getting out. I mean, so much of our jobs now, we're tied to screens, we're tied to a chair, and to get out there and actually enjoy that, I just love. Now, the ironic part is I love the technology aspect of it. I love tracking things on the Apple Watch. I love the Nike Run Club. Last 4 or 5 years, I've got super into Orange Theory. And part of the reason is because they track everything you do. You wear the heart rate monitor, and you try to beat your benchmarks, and you do that. And it's something, I've never held a workout program longer than I have with Orange Theory. Now, building up on that, I'm like, okay, now I need to take this and finally apply this towards a marathon. And it's a finite challenge too, which is part of the other, at CHGO right now, this is an ongoing challenge. There's always going to be another game to cover, another season. Chicago Marathon, like, this has got an actual end date on here, and you're working towards it. I love that. So I actually wanted to write a little bit more about that as we go on. Marcos says, will there be any CHGO Marathon merch? I think absolutely. We have that great sneaker logo as designed by our design czar, Eric and DNVR. By the way, congratulations to the Nuggets crew. But yeah, we're definitely looking towards that as we build this community. So as long as we keep on building, we'll definitely have those shirts.
That's, by the way, that's such a good idea. Like, I'm happy to rock a CHGO singlet in any race.
Singlet, I didn't
design
even think
is
about
awesome.
The singlets.
Like, we should definitely do that. You should do that.
Yeah, Baloney says, I know it's a while away, but have you thought about your race day fit? Look good, feel good, run good. I haven't thought about it yet.
Okay, listen, Baloney is actually getting to a really good point here that is a key piece of marathon advice that I doubt he intended to give. But and this applies generally to any longer race that you do. Like, there needs to be a dress rehearsal in which everything that you wear and everything that you ingest on race day, you're doing in training, right?
Yeah.
Like no surprises on race day. And that obviously it applies to like any nutrition that you're bringing on the course. You got to make sure that you're going to be able to process that and that you can actually choke it down when you're like 12 miles, 16 miles into a race. Clothes are the same way. Like,
Right.
how is this? I might like the way it fits at the start of a race. How do I like it when it's drenched in sweat and I'm 18 miles in?
We're gonna have conversations that I don't know if I'm prepared to have on this podcast.
I mean, I got to be
next
honest.
4 months.
The first thing that came to mind was Andy from The Office when he runs the 5K. And
Well, I was thinking of the nipple chafing.
the nipple chafing.
That was the first thing. The first time I ever saw that in my life was at the Chicago Marathon, and I have never seen it in real life, and it's horrifying. It's so weird. I've just never seen it. I don't know. Girls wear sports bras though, so I guess that's never like I didn't.
I'm glad that you guys
I
brought it
didn't
up because I was
know.
like, should I even bring this up with those guys?
No,
but like that
yeah.
is
That's a
like
problem.
It's a question that I have.
like a
that's
little
for
bit
sure.
of body glide is essential. and
Yeah,
you
I
need to-
already. I already didn't have Body Glide on hand. I did 6 miles over the weekend. And I was like, I'd need this after 6 miles. Shit.
Yeah, and like you need to be like an artist with it too, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to go a little
The
further than
the Van Gogh with the Body Glide.
yes.
What about like tape? Is tape good, or is it just going to like fall off after once you're sweating?
I think it's too likely to actually fall off, but like Body Glide will do the job. It doesn't have to be Body Glide. I'm sure there's a million other products
Yeah.
that do the same thing, but like if you forget it and you realize about 5-6 miles into a race that, oh man, I forgot to do that this morning, you should just stop. You should just
Don't do it.
stop and sign yourself up for another fall marathon because I don't know that it's worth it.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to get into my goals a little bit. Number one, I just want to finish. I don't want to get hurt. I want to finish. It's my first marathon. I thought about attaching a time, and I think that's fine for you. For me, I just thought I don't want to put 5 hours on there. I do think breaking 5 hours is reasonable for where I'm at. But let's say it's, an 87-degree day, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
going to go out the window, right? And I don't want to feel disappointed
Right.
on that day or whatever. So number one is just finish. What did I have for number two? Our producer's talking to Braggs. What did I have for number two? Completely blanking. Oh, here we go. No regrets. Yeah. So that just kind of ties into I just want to be prepared.
Yeah.
I've run a lot of half marathons, and I've run with varying levels of discipline with the program. Sometimes I haven't prepared at all. Sometimes I've been prepared. For the marathon, you have to be prepared, right? And I don't want to say I'm going to completely follow it to the letter, but I'm going to come pretty close, right? Because on October 8th, I don't want to feel like, okay, I could have done more. So number two is no regrets. And then number three is a charity component. I'm running for Cal's Angels, and I want to raise $5,000. I think I'm at like $1,500 already. So have a lot of friends and family that have ponied up for that. I think $5,000 is more than achievable with this platform. So I'm excited for that. And we'll talk more about Cal's Angels as this podcast goes on. But do a little bit of good, get in shape. I want to cut a little bit of weight. I'm at I haven't been able to cut a lot of weight from Orange Theory just because I just haven't really improved my diet. I've done Orange Theory to finance the beer and pizza that I put in my body.
Yeah.
But I think that needs to change. So I'm paying a little bit more attention to diet as we go on. Look, it's a lot easier to run a marathon if you're carrying 15 or 20 fewer pounds around. So, I feel good with where I'm at. I generally feel good with my fitness level, but if I can shed any excess baggage, I'm looking forward to doing that. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you because that was sort
Jared's
of
like, yeah, you definitely need to lose
Yeah.
right now.
dude. No, I was going to say, like I said earlier, that was one of the initial reasons I started running was to help with that, and it was, I feel a big difference in how I felt running early on versus how I feel now, and a lot of that has to do with there's a lot of pounds that I was carrying around 2 years ago that I'm not anymore. And some of it is like I've been surprised at things that I would feel running before that I don't anymore, like IT band stuff that I think as I've gotten better at stretching and some of those kinds of things, but also just not carrying around some extra weight.
Yeah.
I think it helps. My knees, I don't feel like pain in my knees at all, which is like you said about not getting hurt. That's always sort of something that's on my mind is I don't want to, I want to do things that I can to avoid an injury or something like that that's going to get in my way. And I do think that, not carrying as much weight does make a big difference.
I don't really want to talk about injuries and
just don't jinx it.
I just
don't
want
put
to
it out
jinx
there.
things,
Yeah,
but
I'm with you.
I mean, what's your advice for kind of avoiding things like that?
I've been pretty lucky since I've been serious about running. I think one of the smartest things you can do, and it's probably something that was really helpful to me along the way, is this is maybe 9 or 10 years ago when I got really serious into like I want to figure out the marathon distance and I want to get better at this. I ramped up my mileage incrementally, right? Like I didn't just go from 20 miles a week to let's see what 45 feels like, right? Because I feel like that's where injuries happen. Like a huge jump in mileage, a big sort of moonshot swing at something that you've not done before. That's probably where injuries happen. So if I as my mileage climbed, it was like I'm probably averaging any given week right now. I'm probably at around 50 miles, right? Took me years to get there. It took me a long time to get there. That was not like hey, I'm just going to see how 50 miles feels.
Right.
I ramped up really slowly. And it's one of the great things about running, one of the, I don't know, maybe it's not one of the great things about it, but you can't there's no way to get better at it except by doing more of it, right? Or doing it smarter. And you just can't. That's why it's such a party at the end of a race, right? Like we all know what everybody else has been through to get to a finish line.
So I think that's kind of an interesting point because as I've kind of I'm running the Cara program, Novice 2, and right now I rate all my runs on a 5-star basis, and right now everything feels like a 5-star, right? And it's been 3 miles, right? So I'm like, all right, should I be running 4 or 5 miles? And I just kind of had to remind myself, let's just do this, right? Let's get this done. And it kind of applies to your actual in-race, judgment, don't get over your skis, because eventually all this mileage is going to build. Yeah. And I don't need to be running this stuff right now. So
the other thing that has really helped me is and it took me years to do this, right? Like when I first got into it, I wanted every run to be fast, right? I liked going out to the lakefront and running as fast as I could, right? Like that, there's something really fun about that, and it's gratifying when you finish the run. But one of the things that you can only, if you're going to have a 60-mile week, 65-mile week, you've got to run a bunch of slow miles. Not everything has to be marathon pace or faster, right? You've got to just be able to go out there and
just log it.
Yeah, put in some slow base run that helps you build mileage over time and is not going to mess you up, is not going to get you hurt, right? Because that was another little pitfall for me when I would really start to feel some things. It would be like the 5th day in a row of probably an unnecessarily hard run.
Gotcha.
Well, that's been, I think, with the the official training run starting last week, right out of the gate, one of the things that was tough was resisting the temptation to do more than what I knew I was supposed to, because I'm also following, there's a schedule. And last week it was 3 miles on Monday, 3 miles on Tuesday, but I got out there Tuesday, and a couple miles in, I was like, man, I'm feeling really good. I'll go one extra. So I ended up running 4, but then in hindsight, I thought, that didn't really benefit me in any way. It was just an extra mile that, who knows, as these pile up, you got to be careful. And so I think that's something that, I've been thinking about a lot is resist the temptation to do more than what I need to, or go farther than what's being recommended, knowing that as this builds up, I'll get there. I think it's a patience thing. I'm eager to go out and do some long ones, even when it's not time quite yet.
So last week was the first official week 1 of Chicago Marathon training, 18 weeks out. It was kind of cool. I pulled out of here at 5 o'clock on Monday, and Racine was just like filled with runners going, and I knew exactly what those people were doing, right? Like all these people are training for the marathon too. So apart from that, Jared, how did week 1 go?
It went really well. I felt good. Did, like I said, a 3-mile run, a 4, another 3, and then I ran 5 on Saturday. And I'd had a couple of times like over the winter where I'd run like 5 or 6 or so, but I hadn't done much of that distance. It'd been a lot of 3-mile runs during the winter. So just like getting that distance in felt good. And then finishing that feeling like I know I can handle more. I felt good like that. I felt very accomplished about, because, you know, again, knowing that some of these Saturdays, it's the mileage is going to climb. So
right.
To not feel like I was dying finishing 5 miles, like that's an accomplishment.
It definitely did feel good. I had an interesting experience on Saturday during my long run, and you know, we're going to have our encounters with wildlife. I came around a little bend in the path, and there was like 2 trees on either side of me, and as I came through, this hawk just came like right in the middle, huge wingspan, and it was trying to get like all these like little blackbirds, and this thing was like trying to pick them out. It was like 5 feet in front of me, and I was like, this is absolutely freaking metal. And I probably ran a really good mile after that, because like seeing this hawk, like I don't think it got anything, at least not while I was there, but it was like really freaking close. And we've all had like those birds dive bomb our heads when we're running through things, which sucks.
Well, I had last year, a less fun experience, but my first 10-mile run. So this was, you know, I went into it like, hey, this is a big morning. I'm going double digits for the first time. And I think it was right around mile 7. I was going through an intersection, and there was a guy walking his dog. And just the way I kind of tried to go around the guy, I must have startled his dog. His dog reached around and bit me on the back of the leg.
Oh, man.
And it was a good-sized dog, and I was...
Is it a good-sized wound?
Yeah. No, I still have... I won't show it to you now, but I still have a scar to prove it. But but yeah, it was like one of those things where I didn't realize how bad it was until afterward, because I finished running because I felt okay. I was mostly, I think it was the adrenaline of like, you know, what in the world just happened? This dog came after me. And then got home, and my wife saw my leg, and she's like, what in the world happened out there? So not as fun as a hawk.
Did you go get that rabies shot?
Yeah. I had to, you know, and she helped, you know, keep everything, help everything heal. Because then, of course, I was not too far out from the half marathon and worried a little bit about, you know, how's my leg going to feel after this? And it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. But now when I see people's dogs, I give a wide berth.
Dogs, geese. That's what you got to watch for.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, they're not the most dangerous things, but geese are, can I swear in here?
Yeah.
Geese are such assholes. Like,
this if they're making our beer.
This city's, Goose Island geese excluded. All other geese, just absolute jerks. Just absolute jerks. And they'll hiss at you constantly. Like, they're not the most dangerous thing. I've seen probably a couple of coyotes, like, over the years that are not that scared by you, right? And I remember going on a run one time in Arizona, and there was like, I don't know, what is that waterway that goes through like Phoenix or whatever? And there's like a coyote that just tracked me on the other side.
There's nowhere water in Phoenix, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I hated that. I hated having a coyote just like eye me for, you know, a couple miles. I didn't enjoy that at all. I've seen like maybe one in the
all you had
zoo
to say was
city.
meep, and it would have been fine. I had a great week 1. I had a couple short runs mixed in with the long run. I did my first track workout with Kara.
Nice.
And that was fun, and it was running 200 basically sprints, and then kind of a light jog around. So I felt like that kind of helped me with my speed at the later half of the run. So I'm going to do that every Wednesday night. If you're involved in Kara, hit me up. Maybe we could meet up for one of those. And I enjoyed that part of it. So I'm really going to enjoy just the actual. I made an entire page in Notion. I have, which is a database kind of app for anyone who doesn't know, and I have everything labeled, and I'm importing all the data, and like I said, I'm kind of like a geek when it comes to that stuff. So week 1 is good. Week 2 has started well. Still mixing in an Orange Theory workout, getting the strength in there as well. So that's been fun. So as we wrap up here, I guess, Andy, as we have every guest on our show who has been previously runner, just kind of want to hear your general advice for the Chicago Marathon, particularly for people who haven't run it before.
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit about again, I can't stress it enough. Like anything that you're gonna do on marathon day, you should try in training and make sure that it's going to work for you. That's probably just as a general piece of advice. That's as solid as it gets. I will say about Chicago specifically, and you and I were discussing some of these things pre-pod. Maybe it's not this way with technology anymore, but the early miles, like your watch is going to screw up, right? Yeah. Like you're going through underpasses and you're between buildings, and GPS and the city don't always mix, right? So you're going to look down at your watch and your watch is going to tell you that you just ran a 4:30 mile. And you're going to be like, that's BS. I don't think I did. Oh my God. What am I doing wrong here?
Roger Bannister over here. Yeah.
This is where you just have to you have to, first of all, trust your own sense of your own effort, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to, you'll find a pacing group out there, and you'll find your people that are running the pace that you want to be at, and it's okay. And you'll get out of that scene relatively early in the race. The other thing about Chicago, at least to me, is that the neighborhoods are clearly great. Lincoln Park is great, and Old Town is awesome, and you come by Whitney and it's great, and the whole track team turns out for it, and that's cool. Mm-hmm. Pilsen is great. Chinatown, it's lovely, and then you will hit the point in the race where you're in the toughest miles. They are physiologically the toughest miles, right? You're in 21, 22, 23, and you're still moving south away from the finish line, right? And that there can be something mentally challenging.
That's
about
the
that,
worst
right?
part of any Chicago course, even the half marathons. All right, run 3 miles down south and then 3 miles back, and it's I already saw all this shit.
Yes, yeah. This is really hard. I'm going that way. I know the finish line is that way, and that's the one point in the race where you're pretty close to the expressway. It's a little bit industrial. There's just nobody out there.
Yeah,
and the runners aren't talking anymore either, because all that boisterous shit that goes on at the beginning, and we're all high-fiving and everybody's really happy. You're tired. You're in it. You're in your head. Nobody's talking. You hear everybody's feet, but that's all you hear. There might be the occasional word of encouragement, but it's pretty quiet on the course, and there's not a ton of people down there. So one piece of advice that I would have is if your family is going to turn up anywhere, have them turn up there. Whether they're giving you orange slices, they're handing you a drink, whatever, they're just encouraging you. That is where you need it. It's obviously there are practical reasons to have them meet you at the end of the race, but you're going to need them at mile 21.
Get back on the red line, you'll be fine. Man.
Yeah.
So how much one question that I had, I know there's Gatorade water stations along the way. How much do you balance that versus do you carry something yourself? What does that look like for you?
I do not run with water. I don't wear one of those Camelbacks or whatever. And in part because I only sign up for races where I just absolutely stone cold know I'm getting drinks every 3 miles if I need it. Right. I will say that you should, and I think I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that. I think there's science behind this. You should just drink to thirst during a race. You don't need to stop at every water station and gulp down 2 glasses of, that won't necessarily help you. That can lead to bad things too. You should just, if I'm thirsty, I drink. That's a super simple rule. But it is one of the great things about Chicago and the major marathons is that that's never going to be a worry. There's going to be electrolytes available to you. There's going to be water available to you. I will take, I might, at Grandma's, I'll probably have 5 different gel packs with me. There's not a prayer that I'll get all those down, because I don't like eating in the later stages of a race, but you have to take the calories with you, right? Your body literally can't contain enough easily accessible calories to get you through a marathon. So you got to take some with you. So I'll probably manage to choke down 3 or 4 of those within the first 16 miles of the race. And so I'm definitely taking that with me.
Are you a listening to music guy or?
I was thinking about that when you were talking about how we spend so much of our lives in front of screens and all that. I used to, every run I would go on, I'd be listening to podcasts, I'd be listening to music. I find that music can make me, can
Get out of
be
your
a
pace.
catalyst for a lot of
Yeah.
mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh man, this is a banger, and all of a sudden I've run like a 7:15 mile when I should definitely not be doing that, right?
Yeah.
Like that'll happen. I find it really helpful, just even on like training runs. I don't know, it's productive working time for me too. Like I think about things I'm going to write. I think about like, podcast ideas. I think about all kinds of things that have like professional applications while I'm running.
I think of so many things when I'm running, and there's no place to write them down.
Yeah. So I do
Can't
more of
stop
that
them
now.
or
It's pretty rare that I run with a
okay.
with a phone even with me now.
I
Interesting.
used to be a big podcast guy while running, and you should definitely listen to the CHGO Marathon podcast
Yes,
while running.
for
but
sure.
I don't know. I'm a little bit into music, but there's a lot of times also where I don't like to run with my phone. I just like having my Apple Watch. If I can just get out there with the watch, because I like holding my hands like this, right? That's a big thing. And if you're holding a phone, you can't do that. I don't
Yeah.
like wearing the thing on my arms. So I don't know what I'm going to do for the marathon. Jared, do you like listening to stuff?
I'm definitely a music guy, but I have felt that before where there's a certain song comes on and I notice my pace picks up a little bit, which you can get away with on a short run. It doesn't,
Yes. Yeah.
it's not a big deal, but that's good to keep in mind for the longer stuff. Cause I've gotten the suggestion from others to, some music, but then mix in some podcast episodes, some stuff like that, just to help you mentally with like, cause you can't rely on the adrenaline from a song or something like that
Right.
to help push you through a hump or something. But yeah, most of the time right now, I'm very much a music listener.
Got another question from YouTube. I feel like running is similar to golf where people are loyal to a specific brand, whether it be running shoes or gear. Any brands you swear by? For shoes, I'm an ASICS guy. That kind of has always done well for my feet. Always makes me feel good. And I think I've worn the same 2000 GT, I think, or GT 2000. I've worn those for probably 10 years. For shirts, I like Nike Dry Fit, and Lululemon makes real lightweight stuff that doesn't carry any water, which is awesome.
Well, I'm super loyal to the CHGO singlet whenever it's made.
Goes without saying.
I'll only be wearing that. I actually, last few marathons I've done in Vaporflies, like the Nike Super Shoe, whatever, the carbon fiber plate thing, all that. Like, if you're going to invest as much time as we invest in running and in training, I don't know. Like, it's an expensive shoe, but the recovery when you wear these things is so much better.
Really? Okay.
It feels weird. Feels a little bit like you're in a bouncy castle the first time you put them on, but the race experience is so different. The recovery is so different.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've run in those.
Anything you love, Jared?
I haven't really developed any loyalties yet. I've got a pair of Nikes that I'm running now, and it is for me a lot of the types of shirts that I like to wear. Very much the soft fabric, kind of going back to our
Nothing
conversation
worse than
earlier.
a waterlogged shirt that's just heavy. Like
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was a mistake I made very early on, and then never again. And that waterlogged stuff will contribute to chafing, right?
Yes.
Well, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys coming in. The journey has started. The journey starts with but a single step, and off we go. So, Jared, I think you'll be back probably more than a few times. Andy, I may have to call you up for emotional support at some point. Good luck at Grandma's.
Thank you.
I think
Thank
340
you.
is
I love that
there.
you guys have launched this. This is going to be just a blast to listen to.
Yeah. Thanks to our producer, Sarah, who's on the board today. Sarah is going to get out there next marathon, she said, but not for 2023.
Well, I'm actually training for the 10Ks,
There
the
we
Big
go.
10 10K.
Oh, you're doing
Oh,
that's right.
awesome.
You're doing it.
Yeah. No, so I've been running and like doing all that stuff. I don't necessarily know about a marathon. I'm still one of those people where I am a little scared of that, but
It's
I do enjoy running a lot, and I've been training in a sense for the 10K and doing all of that, and baby steps. I do have an
I
itch,
should mention
yeah.
that. So me, you, and Nick Moriano are running the Big 10 10K. I think it's on July 15th.
Like the 15th. or
So we'll do a
something like
CHGO
that.
meetup there.
Yeah,
they have beer afterwards. I ran that with Andy one year.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to do that now. I wasn't signed up previously, but I'll jump into that. That thing
Let's
is a
go.
blast, and the post-race party is super fun.
It was super fun. I got to the last time I ran it, I got to pose with the Paul Bunyan's axe. Wisconsin is not in possession of that now, so I won't be able to do that this year, which is super freaking sad. But
yeah, I'm hoping, though, I'm one of those people where it's like one day, hopefully in the near future, I really would love to do a marathon. I'm just I'm doing baby steps.
We'll get there.
10 days, and then maybe.
After you produce 12 episodes of this, Sarah, you're going to be ready.
I know. I am.
You might run
motivated.
this year. You might run this year for all we know. You might get a late entry.
God, no, I'm not doing the Chicago Marathon this year. No, I'm not in shape for that at all. No.
All right. Well, it's been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to next Tuesday's episode 2. We won't be doing this every week, but we've got a kind of a consistent schedule that we'll share with you once we get that more hammered away. So until then, this has been the Chicago CHGO Chicago Marathon. Kevin Kaduk, Jared Wyllys, Andy Behrens, and we'll see you next time.